Hello, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, or evening to all you students out there. For those of you who don't recognize me or my oversized headphones, my name is Miss Amber, and I'm one of the tutors for English and electives for MVA and Step Up. So today we're going to be going over basically an orientation overview of the English courses, what's in them, what you can expect when you are looking at them, and just generally to try to answer any questions you might have, especially if you were a new student, but also if you're returning or if you just want a refresher on what's in the course, what you can do. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in and share my screen. This is going to be a bit of a lengthy video since we're going over each part of the course. So dig in, get yourself some water, maybe a snack so you can watch this. Hopefully you are watching this at the very beginning of taking a class and not in the middle. And let's get started. So first of all, I want to go over the structure of a class, right? Before we get into opening things and seeing what they do. So here at the top, you're going to have your most important parts here, right? So everything that we need you to know before you start the class is up here. So you can read these. You can see we have course completion requirements. That means what you have to do to finish the course. We have plagiarism. So that's basically our rules for what will happen if you're caught copying and pasting things. And then we have English tutoring information right here. So if you're struggling, you need help with the course, you've tried everything else and you still can't quite get it, this will link you to the calendars of our tutors so that you can schedule an appointment. You can also contact your mentor or your advocate to schedule an appointment. But we put the information right here so that the power is in your hands. And if you need help, you don't have to go through anyone if you don't want to. Then we have our English resources. This is also something you need to see before we get into the courses. We're going to go over what's in this folder a little later. But for right now, I want to just go over the structure of the class. Now, for anyone who is unfamiliar, our classes are made up of units. In this class and in most of the English classes, actually, we have 3 units. We have unit 1, we have 2, and 3. You can see 3 down here. There are also some things at the end of the course, but we'll get to those as we go through. Now, please note that your screen won't look exactly like this, but it will have the same structure. Everything will be organized the same way. So what I want to bring your attention to first for the units is that you can toggle them to expand and collapse them. So collapsing just means that you close them so that you don't see things that you've already finished or that you haven't opened yet. Please remember that you can toggle these open. If you just see a title that says Unit 1 and there's nothing underneath it, it means you probably need to open it. The reason why I'm including this is because there have been a lot of students in the past who skip to Unit 2 or Unit 3 of a class because they think there's nothing in the Unit 1 folder. If we want to make sure that doesn't happen, we want everyone to get the best start that they can get for this year. Now, when you open up these units, there's 3 in this course, but sometimes 4 or 5 in others. I think I've seen up to 7 actually in some of the math courses. What you're going to be greeted with are titles of lessons, and then also the tutorials and the mastery test. So you could also expand and open these as well. So if you see just the title of a lesson and nothing underneath it, you probably need to expand it. Now, each lesson topic is going to be in bold here. You'll be able to see it and click on it. Underneath that, you will have a tutorial and mastery test. Every lesson has a tutorial and mastery test for English. The tutorial is going to be where you get the information you're supposed to learn for the lesson. And the mastery test is going to be a small 5-question quiz on the information from that section. And all of these are like that. So you have the unit, and underneath the unit is the topic for your different lessons. And each lesson has a tutorial and a mastery test. Now, if you scroll down, you have a lot of these. This class only has 3 units. So there are more lessons in each unit. At the end of your unit, sometimes you will have a graded activity or a unit activity. You will have to click on this, see what the activity is, turn it in, and then move on to the post-test. The post-test is always the final element in a unit. The post-test is basically a big combined test that puts information from all of these lessons that are in your unit together. to see if you can use them together and remember everything together. Now, that's the structure of a unit. There's going to be more than one unit for your class. So if they're fully expanded, it'll look something like this. I'll fully expand it so you can see there's a lot of scrolling to do. Here on this right side, when you've completed a course, it will tell you how many times you've opened it. That'll say attempts. And then usually it will have a time stamp that'll tell you how much time you spent in it. And it will also show a grade if you've taken the mastery tests. All of your tests will have grades that are next to them if you've taken them. And if you have a score for any of those, you'll be able to see it next to it. Now, the important thing to remember about these units and mastery tests is that you can take them over. I want to say that at the beginning before I cover anything else about the courses, because students forget that very easily. You can retake your mastery test up to 4 times. And the grade book will keep your highest score out of those 4 attempts. You can try a mastery test after the 4th time, but you'll have to talk to a staff member or schedule tutoring, and they'll have to unlock the test for you to try it again. Because if you haven't been able to pass the test in 4 attempts, then you probably need a little outside help. Now you have your units, you have your mastery tests, you have your post tests, and when you're done with all of those, there's going to be midpoint check-ins and a final exam. So your midpoint check-in will happen kind of halfway through the class. This class and most of the English classes have 3 units. So your midpoint check-in is usually after unit 2. Your midpoint check-in is going to be a conversation that you have with your advocate or your mentor so that you can basically assure them, let them know, prove to them that you've been looking at information in this class. They're going to ask you some questions. They just want to check and see if you actually have been using the class, doing the course, paying attention to everything that's going on. We want to make sure that people are not just cheating their way through the course, copying and pasting answers and things. So they're going to ask you some questions. You'll be able to look through the lessons to help with giving answers. It's just to make sure that you understand what's in the course and you're really engaging with it. Now at the end here, after you finish your final unit, there are things at the bottom that you have to complete before you can have the final open. So we have submit course notes here. You have to turn in notes. We'll cover that a little bit more when we go into course completion requirements. We have the DBA, the discussion-based assessment. This is basically like a graded version of your midpoint check-in. The midpoint check-ins are not graded. It's basically just sort of like a participation thing. We need to know that you're actually working in the courses. When you get to the end, though, there are going to be more sophisticated questions that you have to answer. It won't just be a conversation. It will actually be like a graded discussion is basically what's happening. If you click on the discussion-based assessment, it will tell you which questions you're going to have to answer before you actually arrange the conversation with your advocate or your mentor. So you do get to prepare. We're not just going to spring this on you. So you get to revisit your notes, look at the course, and see if you can figure out what the answers are. If you don't have them in your notes already, this is a good prompt for you to go back and review the answers for this. Then we have a study guide that is exactly what it sounds like. We'll revisit this later and show you like what the example of it is. And then there's the end of semester test. If you meet all of the requirements that we're about to go over in the requirements completion sheet, you will be able to open the final. The final is a test that has a few questions from every single unit and every single tutorial. It is usually a big test. There's usually between, I'd say 25 and 40 questions. It depends on how many lessons there are. The bigger the class, the bigger the final. So there's usually 2 or 3 questions from every single lesson on the final. So it's not just about knowing what's in the very last unit or the second half of the class. There are questions from every part of the course on the final. And that's the general structure of the class. That's what we're looking at just on the surface level. When you look at a class, that's what it looks like. That's what's in it. If you are in Step Up, I do want to note, if you are in Step Up, there is no midpoint check-in. That is important. Step Up is our credit recovery program. So things are structured just a little bit differently for them because they get one class at a time. But for the most part, this will look the same. Now that we've gone over what the class looks like from top to bottom, we're going to open up some of these and look at examples of what these things look like. Now, keep in mind, this is a sample class for English 10. So some of the things that you open may look a tiny bit different here or there. There may be a little bit different wording depending on what's in the class. But for the most part, this will look the same. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your advocate, to your mentor, and they'll break down what's in your class for you in a little more detail if you come across something that seems confusing. Now we're going to start from the top and work our way down. So we're going to open up these course completion requirements. This is a list. This is a list of the things that you are going to have to do to complete the course. We're going to zoom in at 100% and just kind of loosely cover these from top to bottom. So this tells you what you need to do to unlock your end of semester test. You have to work a minimum of 15 minutes in each tutorial. And also you have to have 5 hours in an elective course overall and 8 hours in a core course. English is a core course, so you're going to need at least 8 hours in the class. So that doesn't mean that you have to spend an hour on every test you take or anything like that. But we have a minimum amount of hours just, again, to make sure people are not just copying and pasting things, guessing their way through the course and trying to pass with a very low grade. You have to actually spend time. If you are going through a course and taking notes on all of the tutorials, you'll have the 8 hours easy. There should be no issues with you meeting that hour requirement. So this isn't something that you need to worry about if you're actually going through every lesson the way you should. Sometimes for shorter tutorials, meeting the 15 minutes is a little difficult for students. But honestly, if you are taking notes, you should be able to meet 15 minutes in each tutorial. For some students who are retaking classes that they've already taken at another school, you might just need to slow down and take your time while you're going through them. I understand that it might be frustrating, but we have these in place for a reason to make sure no one's cheating their way through the course. Let's see. It says here you have to attempt to work in each tutorial or the mastery or post-test at least once to receive help from a tutor. That means that tutors can't help you with something that you haven't looked at all. If you have not looked at a lesson and you don't know what you have a hard time with understanding, then it's hard to have a tutor actually help you. Now, if you're looking at a tutorial, for example, and you're having a rough time understanding what's in it, and you want to schedule tutoring to help you get through the tutorial, that's fine. But you can't, for example, ask for a tutor at the very beginning of the class before you've opened anything. We need you to open the lesson at least one time so that we can see that you actually looked at the material. If you don't have any idea of what you need help with, we're not going to have an idea of what to help you with. So moving along, students must complete the midpoint check-in as well as the discussion-based assessment questions with their teacher, mentor, or advocate. So again, if you are in Step Up, you won't have the midpoint check-in. But basically, you just have to make these check-ins with your advocate. I don't think there's anything else to say about that. They do note that you can complete them through Zoom video. That is preferred over a phone call. You have to send in your notes, 10 pages of guided notes. We'll go over what guided notes are when we're reviewing the tutorial, but basically they are fill in the blank notes. And because you don't have to write out everything and you're just filling in the blank, we need 10 pages of those. You can also do 5 pages of handwritten notes. If you do better when you are taking your own notes, you can let your advocate know. You have to turn in 5 pages and they have to be handwritten. You cannot turn in 5 pages of typed notes. This is because you can copy those notes from anywhere. We need to see the actual effort that you are putting in for your notes. In elective courses, 3 pages of handwritten notes. The elective courses are really dense. There's a lot of information in each lesson, especially because the electives are career-based instead of the core classes. So we'll take 3 pages of handwritten notes for elective courses. And then they note here basically what I was saying before. Copy and pasted notes are not accepted. Screenshots are also not accepted. If you want to take screenshots of a lesson to help with understanding and review before you take the mastery test, that's fine. But you have to go back and write it out or fill out the guided notes to turn in if you want credit for your notes. You cannot turn in screenshots. There's no way for us to know with the screenshots if you even looked at them. And that's why we don't accept them. The next note here is notes have to be relevant to the course. So we are going to look at what you actually write down. If you turn in notes for a different class and try to, like for English, if you try to turn in notes like from one of your science courses or anything like that for English, we're going to look at your notes. We are going to read them. So they have to be relevant to the course. We know what's in the lessons, what's part of the topics. So the notes have to be related to the class. And then getting to the last couple things, students must have a 65% or higher in the course prior to unlocking the EOS. So your grade has to be a 65% before we will unlock the final exam for you. That's pretty explanatory. If your grade's not a 65, you're going to have to retake some tests or meet with a tutor to help with raising your grade a little. If you need a little help, you'll have to do some extra review. You'll have to turn in some extra credit. If you're really close to 65%, you just need a couple points to get over. There's going to have to be some additional work if you're not at 65% if you want that final to be open. The next thing here, you need at least a 50% on the EOS, the end of semester exam, to pass the class. If you take a final exam, an EOS exam, and you score a 47, if you score a 35, even if your grade is above 60 or 65 with that final exam score, you still have to retake it. And then it says here, please contact teacher, advocate, or mentor if you score less than 50% on your final. That's very important. If you take the final, you see your grade after you turn it in, you know that it's less than 50%, just reach out. No one's going to judge you. It's not about that. We're just helping you to meet the requirements for you to earn credit and move on to your next classes. And then the overall grade has to be 60% or higher to be granted credit. So in the state of Michigan, which is where we are based, you need a 60%, and actually in most places, you need a 60% or higher to get credit for the course. It's okay if you're struggling with a class. It's okay if you're dealing with a class that's not your best subject, but to earn the credit, you have to have a 60% or higher. And we're willing to work with you to try to help you out, give you some pointers, refreshers, study aids to try to get you to that 60 if you're dealing with a course or a subject that you have a rough time with. Now, there's an exception here at the bottom. Westwood students are required to have an overall grade of 70 or higher to be granted credit. So this is Westwood students in the state of Michigan. So you should know if you're part of the Westwood school district. So if you are a Westwood student, it is 70%. All righty. So that's it for course completion requirements. Here we have the plagiarism document. This is the next one. Because this is an English class, you're going to be writing and answering questions, telling us your opinion on things, and doing a couple small reports. And this is just for English overall from 9 to 12. There are a couple assignments in there where you have to show off your writing skills or at least try to practice them. And the plagiarism document is our policy about what to do when you are basically stealing someone else's work. So this sheet has a couple different things on it. It explains what plagiarism is. It's when you use someone else's words or ideas and you try to pass them off as your own. So that includes copying and pasting from articles online. It's stealing. It says, think about how pirating music is considered stealing. Plagiarism is like pirating someone else's words or ideas to use in your own writing. Part of writing is being able to learn from what you were reading. You want to make connections to the real world and all of that. So you want to be able to practice how to put things in your own words. There's a list of things that are considered plagiarism here. turning in someone else's work, copying words or ideas from someone else without giving credit, failing to put quotations in quotation marks. So if someone says something and you're quoting them, you need to put the quotation in quotation marks. Giving incorrect information about the source of a quotation. Usually when we're grading, we will actually, if you give us the links, we will actually look them up and your grade will be according to what we find. Changing words, but copying the sentence structure of a source without giving credit. Now, there's been some concerns about whether or not using Grammarly counts. If you're using putting things in your own words and Grammarly is helping you to structure the sentence the way it should, that is not the same as copying the sentence structure of a source. But we do search, we do pick out sentences that seem like they don't fit, and we do search them. So if someone asks you questions about that, just be honest. If we find that you stole it from somewhere, it's going to affect your grade. Copying so many words or ideas from a source, this is the last one, that it makes up the majority of your work, whether you give credit or not. Right. So if you mix your words with someone else's and you don't cite the source, you don't tell us where these ideas came from. If you don't tell us, oh, well, according to blank, this idea, blank, blank, blank. You have to actually give us the name of the group or the person that started or wrote the idea that you're referencing. Now, see, it says here, notice what I did there. I got that above information from a plagiarism website. I added the source, see the web address, and that is the website where I got the information. So this is the source. They sourced this here. They're letting you know that this list came from plagiarism.org. If I didn't add the source, it would look like I wrote that myself and bulleted it, right? But I didn't come up with that on my own. It was already written by someone else. If I didn't tell you where I got that information, it would be considered plagiarism. So there's a couple tips to avoid plagiarism here. We've got use your own words, state your sources, and come up with your own thoughts and ideas. I know that sometimes that can be hard, trying to think about things in detail, but try to consider the way that you talk about things that you like, right? You usually want to give people details about the things that you like. Even if you are not a big fan of English, you have to try to get into the mindset of talking about it as if you care about it. And doing that will help you with coming up with your own thoughts, ideas. Try to connect it to things that you know in real life, things that you yourself have experienced, right? Only you have experienced the things that you've gone through. So if you're connecting your reading and your answers to those things, it'll never be plagiarism because you're only talking about yourself and what you've gone through. All righty. So here we have English tutoring information. This is very simple. We won't be here for very long. This is a document with links to everyone's schedule so that you can add information about when you want to meet with someone. If you click to open these up, we'll click on Ms. Vahovic's here, just as an example. You get this Calendly page, which shows you the type of meetings that you can make with her. She usually does a 60-minute meeting, so you can make that. Some of our tutors have a little more or differing tutoring schedules. I have a lot of different options for students just because I've noticed students need a lot of things. So I have 90-minute tutorings for people who need help with their EOS exams, their finals. I have 60 minutes for students who just want to review, like a tutorial or an activity. I have 30 minutes for students who just want help with their mastery test. Like they're sure that they took good notes. They just need help going through the test because maybe the questions are confusing or there's one or two questions that they think they need help on if they get those questions again. And then I have a 15-minute check-in. Sometimes students just need to talk about their progress or ask a quick question or two about something in their class. So I have those options for students. All righty. Now we're going to get into these English resources here, right? So we have the syllabus. The syllabus, if you open it up, it will show you all of the assignments for the class. It's just a big list that we've included. It has the goal of what you're trying to learn in this English class here. I won't read through all of it, but basically it's the goal for what English 10 Semester A is supposed to be teaching you. There's a more detailed list of goals, and this goes through basically what the individual lessons are going to be teaching you. Here's what you should be able to do by the end of the course, it says right here. And then there's information here about what you're going to see at the beginning of the course. The intro video and syllabus is basically just an account of everything that you can see in the course. This video is here to help visual learners, because not everyone learns by just kind of going through the list, right? So we've got the tutoring information, the course completion requirements, the syllabus. We're going over that now. And then there is a list of all of the courses that are here: Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3. And then we also have the midpoint check-in and everything. These are the names of the lessons. And then over here on the right side, even though this looks like gibberish, these are state standards for what these lessons have to teach you for you to earn credit in the courses. You don't really have to trouble yourself with that, but if you are the type of person, or if you have a parent who's looking for information about what standards, especially for Michigan district classes, these things meet, you can find that information here. All righty, now here we go. We have the student orientation. You can click this and open it up. And basically, this is gonna give you a little intro to Edmentum, to the courses and what they're made up of. And pretty much we just need you to go through this and it'll give you pointers on how to complete it successfully. Basically just a in-lesson version of what we're doing here. This is a little focused on showing you like how to study for the lessons instead of just going over what's in the course, like what we're doing in this video. But some of the information that's in here is actually very useful. And I suggest that you take a look through it just so that you can become a little familiar with what you're going to find in the course. This video is going to be rather long while we're going through things, but if you forget about anything that has to do with Edmentum, you can go through this and get pointers for how to stay on track. There's a video here that also offers more information. You'll want to watch that. And that's pretty much it for the student orientation. It's just it's a short little like mini lesson with pointers on how to study if you have a hard time with that, how to process information if you have a hard time with that. We have the What's in it for me English resource folder. So this is kind of the introduction to the resource folder that's down here. This is going to be a PowerPoint, so let me go ahead and open it up. So I'm not going to go through this entire thing in detail because these sentences are pretty simple. It's broken down in a way that's supposed to be easy for students to understand. But basically, this is an explanation with screenshots of what you can find in the English resources folder. I'm basically going to go over that with you, but we include this in here because not everyone's going to watch the intro video, even though they should. Now here, this basically breaks it down. The folder has 4 main parts. So we have an explanation and access to English self-help. So we have a system set up where you guys have resources that you can use to help you with studying. And this is something that you should try to do before you ask for tutoring. Not everyone does well with tutoring. Some people have anxiety. So we have the information that you might need written in a folder, copied in a folder, so that you can seek out help yourself if you're the type of person to push and try to learn things on your own before you work with staff. The next thing is the English concept summaries. So if you've had a math class, you might be familiar with these, the concept summaries. If you have not had a math class, basically, these are PowerPoints that give you a summary of different ideas that are in the lesson that you can reference for your notes. As you'll see when we're clicking through the slides, sometimes it can become hard to figure out, oh, where was this piece of information? I'm not sure what slide it was on. I don't know how to find it. So the English concept summaries is going to be like small bite-sized versions of things that you can find in the lessons. So if you're missing something, you can look it up and put it in your notes without having to click through everything. Next, we have helpful websites and videos. So basically, if you need more information about something, or if you think that having something from the lessons explained to you in a way that's different from how it is in Edmentum might be helpful. You might want to consider looking at these websites and videos. And then lastly, we have extra credit. So this first slide explains the help process, right? So these are documents that are in the folder. We're telling you about the first 3 items in the folder that are actually important to look at. There's a document called English Success Process. There's another one that's the English Concept Summary Intro. So basically, this success process explains how to use the concept summary. So if you don't know how to use them, this is a general explanation of how, again, for people who may not have watched this video. It explains here that these concept summaries are PowerPoints that act like a bridge between the tutorial and the mastery, post-test, and final test, and you can use these as open notes. So these are PowerPoints that you can save to your computer. You can copy them down into your personal notes and use them to help with any of the mastery tests, the post-test, or the final. And then we have the summary, intro, and access. So basically, this has a link to the file folder. It's just an intro. So this explains the process. The first document explains, like, so if I'm a student, what steps should I take before I ask for tutoring help? It lists those as a 1, 2, 3 sort of step process. And the intro and access basically just explains what they are, what the concept summaries are, and how to use them. Then next, we have English test tips. These are also things that show up in the folder. These basically give you 1-slide summaries of what you should focus on. So if you want like a hint on what I should focus on for the class, you can look at these test tips. Here's screenshots of what the resources folder looks like, just to give you an example in case you don't know. So when you open this up, you're going to see this folder here that you have access to. Basically, this is the top of the folder. So as you can see, there's a folder for each class. Just because of number order, we've got 10A and 10B at the top, but basically there's one for each class. We have 9A and 9B here, 10A and 10B here, 11A and 11B here, and 12A and 12B here. Now, the good thing about the way that we have these resources put together is that if you are a student who, say you're in 11A or 11B, maybe there's something that you forgot from English 9 that you think would be very helpful, or that you want a refresher on for something that you have in English B. Like, say they reference a literary device, like a metaphor, and you're like, I don't remember what that is. If you are in the folder, you can go into the 9A and 9B folders to see where that information is. You have access to pretty much everything from every grade. So if you're doing extra credit, if you are looking for a little extra challenge, you want to learn a little extra or brush up on something that you forgot in another class, you can go through all of these folders and look for what you need. Now, the next slide just gives you the navigation example, right? So this is just the folder, what happens when you click on one of these grade folders. So this example is, what if you're here, right, and you click on 12A? So if you click on 12A, you're going to open this up, and this is what the folder looks like. You have a concept summaries folder. This is where the PowerPoint information is. You have the tutorial test tips folder, and we're going to see what's in there shortly. You have the glossary. The glossary is all the vocabulary words for the whole English 12 class. So if you want to see a list of them all in one place, so you don't have to look through the different tutorials to find the lists, you can just click on this link here. And then at the bottom, we have the live lesson recordings. These are recordings that we did last year covering the tutorials. So we had our tutors go through the lessons and explain different parts of the tutorials from start to finish. Now, we explained most of what's in the slides and not the reading selections, just because the reading selections take a lot of time to go through, and it's a little better if you have one-on-one tutoring for the reading selections. But if you were having a hard time understanding the concepts that are in the slides, and looking at the summaries doesn't help. Like if you just need a breakdown of someone talking to you and explaining it live, that's what these recordings are for. Now we have the concept summaries example. So this is what the concept summaries look like. You're going to get into this folder. This is a concept summary folder. You're going to have it says here, open first, right? So this is a master list at the very top. The master list has a list of all of the concept summaries that are in this folder. So if you're having a hard time finding anything down here just by looking at the PowerPoint lessons, you can just click on the master list and it will show you every single one in order from lesson to lesson, so that you can find what you're looking for. Now, next, we have the English test tips folder. So the test tips is going to be inside each course as well. So remember when we were here at the example, we have the test tips here underneath the concept summaries. So once you click into that folder, this is what you're going to see. They're broken down by unit for each class. And once you get into the unit that you're working on, you'll see these PowerPoints. These are very small, quick bites. If you're wondering at the beginning of a lesson, what should I focus on learning for this class? This is what I would actually go to first. These were put together by Miss Kathy Vahovic, and she did a really good job of pointing out, here's what you should focus on if you want to pass the mastery test. It's a little hint at the beginning to tell you what to double down and focus on. Now we're nearing the end here. This last section are the help links and videos, right? So we have extra links here that are supposed to help students going through the course. We're going to look over these shortly, but there are examples here in case you just need, a refresher on what's in here. This is basically PowerPoint to help you if you don't want to watch this video over to get the information you need. Now, this is a screenshot of the English resource folder. And this section at the bottom with all these Word documents are the links and explanations. Now, as you can see here, this is in small print. Basically, we have documents like grammar help, punctuation help, research help links. So if you want to read something that'll help you explain or help explain to you how to do research for a paper, because the Edmentum lessons aren't jiving right with you. Everyone learns differently. We have these links here. We also have useful links for students down here. So if you're writing an essay, if you're filling out a job application, if you're trying to get into college and you have to write a little about yourself, these are links that you can use to help just with how to write well. How to organize your sentences, how do you do punctuation? Sometimes that's hard for students to understand. These are things that are sometimes covered in the earlier English courses, like English 9A and B and 10A and B, but sometimes we have students that come in late. They're 11th graders, they're 12th graders. They need the review, but they can't go back and take old classes that they've already passed. So these links are here to help you in case you need any of those things. And then, of course, at the very bottom, we have writing help links. So this is for, your assignments, your essays, your book reports, things like that. Down here, we have an example of what one of those links looks like when you open them up. So English links and videos, right? So this is an example. This is from the more grammar help document. And basically, it's a list of links that can explain things about grammar to you if you don't understand them. Some of these, again, are covered in early English classes, but for students who are coming in and they're juniors and seniors, we wanted to have a place where you can review those sort of things. Some of you are part of after-school programs. Some of you are trying to get hired for jobs. Some of you just want to learn so you can submit things for scholarships and stuff like that. So this is just a list of topics in case you want review. And I think that's about it for the help links. Moving on, we have extra credit. So extra credit here, we have an extra credit folder in here. I'm going to scroll up to the resource example. You can see here at the bottom, right above grammar help links, there is an extra credit assignments folder. Now, extra credit is only offered to students who really need like a couple extra points, like they've met the minimum requirements for everything, but they still have a grade that just isn't high enough for them to unlock the final. And then it says there's a maximum value of 5 to 10% for extra credit. So 10% of your credit, that's as much that your extra credit can be weighed. It really is just for students that need that little push, even though they finished everything else to get the final unlocked. And then lastly, we have this slide here in conclusion. The key to your success in this English course is you want to use the master list spreadsheets, right? You want to use the test tips. You want to use the help websites and extra credit if you need them to pass and open up the final. Alrighty. So now that we've gone over that, I'm just going to open up the actual resources folder so you can see what it looks like on my screen and not as a screenshot somewhere, right? So these files are here. This is exactly the same way that the screenshot looks. And because we kind of looked at an example of like the grammar help, you can see the what's in it for me PowerPoint is right here, just in case you happen to be in the folder and you don't want to hit back to get to it there. I'm going to open up the English self-help and the success process. These are labeled 1 and 2 because these are the things that we want you to open first and second. Okay, so this just explains the folder. You may not need this link if you already have it, you're here. But sometimes your advocate or mentor might send you this link instead of the folder link. So we just wanted to make sure everything was related so students aren't stuck on a document not knowing where to go. But the explanation here, it says here, this link will access the English resources folder, which is exactly where we were here, sorted by grade and class. And that's exactly what you can see here. All of these are sorted by grade and class, right? So in this folder are PowerPoint presentations that break down and explain examples for ideas in your tutorials, like grammar rules, how to read poetry, or the writing process for essays. So these are all things that pop up in your Edmentum lessons. These are not extra links. These are topics directly from the Edmentum tutorials. So you can use these for notes to help with the mastery test. So there's 2 ways to access these summaries, right? You find the topic that you're looking for in the folder. So what they mean here is, say we go to English 10A, because that's our test course, right? You go to the concept summaries folder, and there's a list of all these PowerPoints, right? So you could just find what you need directly and click on it. If you are in the section, the focus on language, and you want an explanation for clauses, say you just looked at it, you're on the test, you're not sure, you don't know what's going on. You can go ahead and click on clauses. It'll open it up. It'll be a PowerPoint just like this with short explanations. There are sections, there are section headers. You get highlights with the different definitions. There are examples from Edmentum as well. These are literally the same information from the Edmentum slides, just put into smaller pieces so that you don't have to click through everything to find the examples and to find the definitions. So this is one way you can get to them. The second way is to open the PowerPoint's master list. And then it says you can hit Control F to search for your topic. So up at the top, it says here, open first, right? So if you click on this, it's a spreadsheet that basically shows you every single PowerPoint just in order, right? So for English 10A, we have the name of the lessons here, right? So we have 1.1 at the end. The number at the end is the one that's most important. 1.1 basically just means Unit 1, Lesson 1, right? We have this second column here. Where else does this information show up? So it tells you if this information repeats in another class. That way you know, hey, does this show up again? Do I need to take notes on it now? How many more times in the other classes does it come up? And in some of these, you can tell, looking here, this information is from English 9. And it's from a few different lessons in English 9. So this is one of the lessons where they're repeating information from a previous class. They don't always do that, but it's important to know if it might come up later. Sometimes you'll have things that show up in future classes. So for example, this is for English 10A, right? But if we look at this lesson here for focus on language phrases, this shows up in English 10A in a different lesson other than the one that we're looking at. And it shows up in English 11A too. And then we have other things that show up in previous classes. This one's from middle school. It's POV cheat sheet, that's point of view. And they're color coded too. So just to make it a little easier to find. These are from the focus on language sections. These are the ones that are highlighted in blue. If it's in this mid color, then it's comparing and contrasting concepts. That means if there's two topics that usually get mixed up by students, these are what they are. So you may want to take a look at them to make sure that you don't get them confused. We have this coral color for poetry. There's no poetry in English 10A. And then we have literary devices. That means fancy ways that people add language to their stories to make them more colorful, right? Fancy writing, so to speak. We have one lesson in here about that. It's about symbolism. And then we have related to writing essays in gray and purpose of a text. Purpose of a text is something that shows up in English classes the entire way through. Why did someone write this? What is the purpose of it? What are you supposed to think while you're reading it? Is it supposed to persuade you to think something? Is it just telling a story? Is it giving you information? And because this comes up in all of the classes, all of the 9 through 12 A and B classes, we have a section highlighted for this. Let's see. This isn't something that shows up in 10A or B, but for other courses, at the top, you'll see highlighted in green, it'll be a green color, a glossary. That is the glossary for the course with the vocabulary words. English 10A and 10B focus a little more on debate and argument stuff, like persuasive things. So there's not as much vocabulary in terms of the glossary in here as for the other classes. But if you see something at the top, that's what that is. Alrighty. And the rest of this doc just says, once the link is open, choose the English subject from the tabs, and then click the link for the specific topic that you want. Feel free to look through topics from grades other than the one that you're in. This is what I mentioned earlier. They might help you understand what you're working on. And then there are instructions for how to save the master list on your, the master list or the concept summaries on your computer. So if you have one of these PowerPoints open, you can follow the steps. So say we have character and theme here. I just opened it up randomly. You can click File, Save As, and then download a copy. So File, there's Save As here, there's Download a Copy here. And if you do that, it'll open up something similar to this, where you can save it as and name it yourself. I'm going to cancel this because I don't actually want to download it. But if you want to have something on your computer that you can reference during a test, you can download it that way. And I think that that's about it. Alrighty. So now that we're done with the resource folder, let's move on to the meat and potatoes of the course, right? Which is the actual lesson. The resources can help you with studying on your own in case you forget something, in case you're not sure where to find something, in case you feel like you just need to see something a little bit differently for it to click. That's what the resources are for. If you're still having issues with things after you look at the resources, you may want some help. Oh, actually, yes, actually, the English success process, I forgot about that document. Let me head back in here. This is the number 2 thing here. This basically outlines the steps that I just talked about, but I just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page about it. These are basically the steps you should take while you're going through the class to decide if you need help. Sometimes students don't know that they need help. They kind of want to try to take the test over and over and over, and they hope that something's going to be different. So we have these steps here specifically to help with you figuring out whether or not you actually should go to help if you've tried everything. If you haven't tried everything, then follow this list and see if that helps to improve things. If it doesn't, then you probably need to sign up for tutoring. So step 1 is to review the tutorial, right, and take the mastery test. If you pass it, you want to go on to the next lesson, right? Like, duh. If you do not pass, right, and you have less than 60%, then you want to go into this folder and use the concept summaries to look over it and study. You can put what's in the resource folder into your notes. You want to make sure that it's from the lesson that you're currently working on. Review the topic tutorial with that information. So basically, this is to help you with your notes. You have to go through the tutorial again to unlock your test, and we'll go over that in a little more detail in just a bit. And then you can take the test again using the summaries as open notes. So you can download them and pull them up while you're working, or you can choose to write what's in the concept summaries down in your notes and use that. But either way, you'll end up with notes that you can use while you're taking the mastery test. And then it says here, number 5, if you're still experiencing difficulties for that course topic, contact your academic counselor mentor and have them schedule a tutoring session. So this is the point. Number 5, if you use the concept summaries, you review the tutorial again, and you still fail the mastery test, then instead of being stuck on that lesson and taking it over and over and over, you probably should seek out help. Now, if something clicks while you're in the middle of the test the second time, or if you feel like you chose your the first answer that came to mind, and now that you've chosen it and you know it's wrong on the question, you want to go back, you're like, if I get that question again, I know for sure what it is, then maybe you can take it again another time, right? But if you're just lost, you don't know anything that's going on, you look at the concept summary, it doesn't make sense. You look at the tutorial again, it doesn't make sense. And then you take the test again and you still don't pass it, then you want to schedule tutoring, because sometimes it helps to have a person with you on Zoom explaining the topic while you're going over it. Sometimes it doesn't click while you're reading it, and that's okay. Everyone learns differently. But this is the point where you will want to do that instead of just doing the same thing over and over. All right, now we're getting into the meat and potatoes, right? So we went over the class structure, right? So we have the units, tutorials, the mastery test, and then at the end of the unit, we have a post-test. So now we're going to open up a tutorial so you can see what it's like. So we're opening up this one. This is the very first lesson from English 10A, and it'll give you an example of what you're going to find while you're in the lessons. So you are going to be greeted by this introductory video. There's one of these for every lesson. Sometimes there's a warm-up activity where they ask a question, but usually you get these headers. So it'll tell you the title, it'll tell you the objective. So the objective is, what is the point of this lesson? What are you supposed to get out of it? It's important for you to know so that you know if you're not meeting that objective, right? If you know that you're not getting it, it'll let you know when you need help. You get a little introduction video, not just to the course, but to this topic. It's usually not more than about this long, which is like 1.5 minutes. Then this is the general structure of the lessons, right? So you get comparing subject and theme in fiction. This is just for this one lesson. So you get the header up here, and then you get some paragraphs that give you information about what you're supposed to be learning. That's basically the structure of these tutorials. Sometimes you'll get a chart. Sometimes you'll get small like interactive boxes and things like that that you have to click on to reveal information. But more or less, this is the bulk of what your slides are going to look like. Here you have a video. Sometimes these lessons do have videos. To move on to the next slide, you do have to watch the video. That is actually very important. Let's see. Let's see what's on this slide. Okay. So more information. If you see a link that's in blue like this, with this icon here, this little square with the arrow coming out of it, this means that you can click on it to open up more information. We had a lot of students that sometimes skip these. There's important information in these. Usually the reading selections for these lessons are in these links. So if you click this, it'll open up to this short story, The Open Boat, which is what you need to read for this lesson. So keep an eye out for these because they have important information. Let's see if I can find another slide type for you guys. I think this lesson is actually pretty simple, to be honest, because it is the first lesson of the class. What we just passed, sometimes you'll get a slide with a question on it. It's basically a little check to see what it is that you know, right? It'll ask you a question based on the slides that came before the question. You can always go back and look at those slides if you need a refresher to answer the question. And basically, it'll confirm that you turned it in and gave the correct answer. Here's another slide with another link. Most of the reading selections are in links. Let's see. And then we have lesson activities. So lesson activities are important too. These are basically assignments within your tutorial. Now, the questions that students have most often about these is, are they graded? The answer is no. The point of these assignments is to serve as milestones for you guys so that you can see if you're understanding the assignment. If you get to a lesson activity and you have no clue about what it's talking about at all, you have absolutely none, that probably is a sign that you need to go back and review what's in the slides before. Usually for English, this will have to do with having you read through things. So they give you the link again for the interlopers, right? And then they ask you questions based on what you learned in the slides. Consider what you have learned about the subject and theme in literature. What is the subject? And they meet of the interlopers, the story here. And what is one central theme in this story? How does the author introduce and develop this theme throughout the text? And then you will put your answer in here and then click submit. Sometimes there's more than one part to a lesson activity. So as you can see here, we have a part A and part B. So there's a second question. And then there's part C, which is another question. I do want to note here, because these are not graded assignments, the goal for you submitting these is to try your best to answer these questions. If you get here and you're completely lost, you might need help from a tutor. But if you get here and you feel like you kind of understand it, but you're not sure what answer they're looking for, just do your best submitting these. That's what we want you to do. Do your best submitting these. Once you submit your answer, it's not going to show me here because I don't have anything in that box. But once you submit your answer, it will give you like a sample answer that will basically give you something to compare your answer against. So the general idea of these is to submit your answer, look at the sample answer and see the differences between your answer and the sample answer, and then put the differences that you may have forgotten about or that you didn't include in your answer in your notes. So the idea behind these is to give you a little more practice on answering questions so that when you get to the mastery test, you'll understand the questions and what type of answers they're looking for. Let's see. Is there another type of slide here? For English specifically, there's a focus on language sections. So usually these will teach you grammar. So you have the part of the lesson that talks about writing and things that you can find in writing. And then there's focus on language, which is supposed to teach you how to put things together when you write. And they're just always called focus on language. Here, they're telling you about different types of clauses. So this is what are different parts of a sentence. So you'll find different sections like these that talk about what makes up a sentence, what type of words you use to transition, different techniques you can use to show or tell people other things. In terms of like making your writing a little more fancy or professional. It's basically the part where you learn how English is structured and not just what people write. Let's see. Are there any other types of slides here? Because there are a couple others that you'll come across. Some of them have like little boxes that you can click on for more information. Some of these have other sections, but I don't think so. I think this is a pretty simple lesson because it's just the first lesson. Once you get to the end, you have a summary video here that'll give you some points of things that you should remember for the final, not the final, for the mastery test. And then when you get to the end here, you know you've completed it. Now, important things for tutorials, now that we've gone over what some of the slides look like. This bar here has information that's actually very important. If you click here, this is a table of contents. Now, if you have finished a tutorial before, you'll be able to hop around to different sections here. If you have not completed the tutorial before, it is not going to let you do that. It will not let you hop around to these. You'll only be able to go as far as the last slide that you were on. So there's no rushing through the tutorial if you haven't done it before. This next folder is resources. Now, this is where you find the guided notes. Now, guided notes are the fill in the blank notes that we talked about earlier for the completion requirements doc that you have to turn in. Now, if you click on this, it'll open up the guided notes. This is for subject and theme in fiction. And as you can see here, there are sentences here from the tutorial, and you just have to fill in the blank here. Now, there are a couple different ways that you can do this and save it. You can fill things in this window and save it, but most students don't know how, so they prefer to download it. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do this. Now, if you click print, and this is after you fill it in, if you save it as a PDF, it will save the answers that you put in. So like, for example, if I, let's see, we'll put the theme is the central idea or message. Oh, actually, I think it's universal truth. Universal, yep, truth explored in a piece of writing. It is a message that makes the reader think about blah, 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 right? So if you come over here to save as PDF, you hit that print button. See, it has the words that I put in here actually saved, and you can save it like that. That is one way to save it if you want to fill it in exactly here the way it is. Let me move back over here. If that's a little scary for you and you don't want to risk, like refreshing the page or closing the window and things like that, I completely understand. That's perfectly fine. What you're going to want to do is hit this download here and save it first. You want to save the document first before anything else. Did it? Oh, yes. Okay. So it says save with your changes or without your changes. So there's a couple different ways to do that too. If you save it with your changes, it will in fact save with your changes the same way as you did with the print. If it saves without your changes, then it'll save as blank. So you want to make sure you're picking the right option here to save with your changes. And if you do that, it'll basically bring up a window for you to save things. So there we are. That is subject and theme in fiction. These are the guided notes. 10 pages of these have to be filled out. Now, if you can see here, this one guided notes piece has 5 pages. So it is not hard at all to turn in 10 pages of guided notes. That's about 2 lessons for English anyway. That is about 2 lessons. These are 5 pages. So the requirements for our notes, just to prove that you're going through the lessons, is actually not a whole lot. And if you look at it that way, it's a little easier to do. You have to make sure that you're not building it up in your mind as like this really terrible thing, because that'll make it more difficult to do. Alrighty. So now that we're done with those, oh, also, there's no glossary for English 10 A and B, which I covered before when we were looking at the resource folder. But for other classes, there is a glossary, and you'll find those in here. Usually there will be something underneath this that just says glossary. Now moving on, we have our dictionary. If there's a word you don't understand, say for example, interloper, right? Because that's what this story is named. You can look up interloper and it will tell you. Interloper or interlopers is a person who intrudes or interferes wrongly or meddlesomely, right? So someone who interferes. You can use this to look up any word that's in the tutorial. Unfortunately, this only stays open when you have the tutorial open. So if you look up a word, you're going to want to put the definition in your notes so you can hold on to it for a mastery test or something like that. Sometimes in the lessons, when you get to the 11 and 12 courses, you're going to have vocabulary lists that will give you the definition and how to use it, example sentences and stuff like that. You're going to want to write those down and put those in your notes. Sometimes those vocabulary lists show up in the guided notes. Usually they do. Alrighty. Moving towards the end, we have reading tools in the second half of these options here. We have slide narration here. So basically, when you turn this on, the slide will read to you automatically. So as soon as you hit the next button up here, it'll start to read the next slide. And then we also have a click to speak option. If you turn this on, you will hear the sentences read aloud. And if you click this on, you can click on these sections and it will highlight what it's reading while it's reading things. So those are for audio learners. If you do better hearing things read to you, like you're an audiobook listener, if it's just easier for you to hear and follow along with your eyes while you're reading so that you can learn how to pronounce things and stuff like that, we have options here for you. Here we also have some controls. I'm going to move myself over here really quickly. We have this right here, this icon. You can play this here, and it will actually read the slide for you as well. You can toggle it on and off. It's just that if you toggle this on here, if you turn this on, it'll read it automatically when you move to the next slide. We'll close this out. Next, we have a translator. Usually students don't need this, but occasionally you might come across a word from a different language. Some of the reading selections do have words from different languages in them. It's not a whole lot though, but we do learn about different cultures in this English class because writing is something that all cultures do. So there's a long list of things that you can try to translate if you think that that would be helpful. So you can put the word that you're trying to translate here, and then it'll give you a result. And then lastly, but not least at all, we have a highlighter. So the highlighter can be used to highlight things in a text. You can basically highlight what you want to put in your notes if you're going through the class, for example, and then come back to it later. So this helps students who want to read through the lesson first to see what's important before they go back and take notes. So normally what people will do is they'll have this open, right? We'll go into the comparing subject and theme in fiction, right? So someone will read through this, for example, they'll read through all three of these paragraphs, and then they'll come to the highlighter page and they'll say, oh, this gives us the definition of something, right? So authors often use characters, dialogue, setting, and other elements of fiction. So this explains how authors use things. Maybe for explanations, they want to highlight it in purple. So they put that there and then they move on to the next slide, right? And then when they get to the end, after they're done, they'll come all the way back to the introduction here. They'll go back to that slide. Oh no, it deleted it. Oh no. But basically it's for you to highlight. So once you highlight it, you can come back to it. Personally, the way that I have students use this highlight tool, especially because when you close the tutorial, it does not keep your highlights. Personally, what I like to do for notes is I'll have a student read through these paragraphs, right? So you want to read through things first, then come back and decide what to put in your notes, because there's no point in writing it down if you don't know how to organize it. So I would read through these 3 paragraphs and make a note on what it's saying. We get a definition here. The subject refers to the topic of the story. So this is a definition, right? So maybe I'll put that in yellow. This is an explanation of how people use things. So I wanted a different color. This is an example. So maybe I want it in green. So while I'm reading through this, I'll highlight these different colors. And then when I get to the bottom here at the end, then I'll say, oh, these are the things I want to put in my notes. If you're a slow reader and you tend to forget things while you're going through them, or if you just need to see or make note of what you think is important while you're going through, and so you can come back, that's what this is for. This is perfect for that. Alrighty, those are all of the tools. Lastly, mastery tests. right? So I'm not going to open these just because I don't want to give people previews of the test questions. But an important thing to note here in terms of your grade is that you can retake your mastery test up to 4 times. That's 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you take the test the first time, you're not doing well, you can take it again. Now, we discussed this with the English resource folder. So the question is, I'm sure, how do you retake your mastery test? The way that you do that is by going through the tutorial again. So once you finish the tutorial, it'll show you that you completed it, right? There's a circle that will be filled in on the student view. Once you take the mastery test, say you score a 20%. Sometimes students even score 0. I talk to students all the time and they say, oh, I clicked on the mastery test by accident and I got a 0. So now I'm stuck with the 0. You are not stuck with the 0. If you open the test by accident, or if you take the test and you misclicked and you knew you could have gotten, like an 80 or a 100, you can take the test again. If you score low, you can also take the test again. What you're going to do is click on the tutorial. You're going to go through the slides again. You want to take notes on the topics of the questions that you got wrong if you have a low grade. And it's always good to review to add to your notes if you actually feel confident about the question still. And basically, when you get to the end of the slide, that's what we were talking about before. I'm going to open this back up just for an example. When we get to the end, and when I say the end, I mean the very end, because I want to make sure you guys understand what I mean. The very end. So this slide right here, not good enough. You can't get to slide 33 out of 34 and have it reset your test. It's not going to happen. They need you to click to this slide here that says, congrats, you have completed the tutorial. You have to get there a second time and then save and exit. And then the mastery test will be unlocked so that you can take it a second time. Now, usually if you fail a test twice, that's when we have you reach out for tutoring help. But there are some exceptions, like I discussed earlier. If you open a test by accident, so it wasn't your actual second attempt, or say like you were just unsure about one question and you think that if you go back, you can get it, those are fine. But if you know that you're struggling, reach out for tutoring. That is what the tutoring information is for. That is what that's for all of the courses. That's true in terms of retaking the mastery test. It's true for all of the courses, math, science, English, social studies. Finish the tutorial a second time or again, and it will unlock the test. The gradebook does not keep your lowest score, it keeps your highest one. So say if you have an 80 and you want to shoot for a 100. If you close the test early, if you refresh the page by accident and you get kicked out of the test, it's going to keep that 80% that you scored the first time or the second time. Whatever your highest grade is, that's what it's going to keep. So there's no risk to you in retaking anything. We want you guys to go back in and try to actually learn the material and try to become well-versed in the class. So we're trying to give you guys tools because we know you're working from home. You guys do have staff support, but you guys are going through the information yourselves. So we're trying to give you guys tools to put the power of your grade in your hands. Alrighty, so those are tutorials. We've got this midpoint check-in. The midpoint check-in is basically just a discussion you're going to have with your advocate. During this discussion, you are going to review information. They're going to ask you a couple questions. This is basically kind of like a participation grade. They just want to make sure, that you know the material, you're going through it, and that you understand what's happening in the class. The discussion-based assessment here at the bottom is kind of like the professional version of this. This is a graded assignment where you have to answer specific questions. So I'm going to open this up so you can see the example. You're going to get this document. It's going to tell you what the questions are. The question that you're going to discuss with your mentor and advocate, they give you the questions. This is just to tell that you've actually been going through the course, that you can actually go through, find information, use the resource folder to find it if that's what you need to do. You need to actually be able to answer questions about the course that you were in. This is actual proof that you went through, you didn't just look things up or cheat your way through the course. And these questions are fairly simple. You can find the answers in any of the lessons that it actually relates to. Anything that's important that gives you a hint on where to find the answers is here. It's underlined. Describe a persuasive text, for example, and explain why the author uses rhetorical techniques to persuade readers to agree with them. So if you're answering that question, you're definitely gonna try to come through to Unit 2, because this is where we get opinion in informational texts, elements of informational nonfiction, and then we'll have other things in here, not Unit 3, Unit 1, actually, I think. Yes, we get narrative techniques and things like that, but it's mostly going to be Unit 2 because we're talking about opinion, right? So opinion and purpose. So that's when we're talking about persuading things. Now, if you're not in English 10A, obviously these will be different questions. These are not the same questions for every class. The questions are going to be related to your course. So if you're in English 12A or 9A, the questions will be different. They are different for each class, but you should be able to find them. It says right here, please keep in mind that the answers to these questions can be found within the Edmentum course. We've checked, we've double checked, we've triple checked. We get students every year who are like, I don't know where to find this answer. The answers are in the course. You just have to comb through and find them and take your time. Once you have the answers, you can come down here and see how we're grading you. We tell you how we're going to grade you for this. We tell you all the different sections. Content, that's the actual answer itself. Can you answer the question while you're talking to your advocate or your mentor? Focus details and examples. Did you write down any examples from the tutorials? Do you remember any examples from the tutorials? Organization. This is basically just how you're talking about the information. Is it random? Do you seem to know like what you're talking about, what order the steps are in, how you do XYZ that you're putting in your answer? Can you tell us where you got the answer from? And all of the steps for how many points you get are described right here. So you can organize your answer. You can even take notes on what you want to say from the course based on these. And then these last two, voice and comprehension, what type of words do you use? Do you remember the vocabulary from the class, right? And then like word choice. So are you using the terms that were in the class to describe the answer to the question? So if we're talking about a persuasive argument, there are words they use in the lesson. It helps us to know that you were looking at the course if you use the same words that they pulled up for you to explain in the tutorials. And since you get to see all this in advance, you can't get to, review and prepare your answer. I totally understand that some of these questions are not from the very last unit, so you may need to refresh yourself on them. All of our staff also understands this. We just want you to be able to show you can answer these questions, you know where to find them, you actually looked at the answers, and you're not just making stuff up off the top of your head for this class. Alrighty. Lastly, we have these last couple items. So we have submit course notes. This is where you would turn in or submit your notes. So that's your guided notes, you will upload them. If they're handwritten notes, you would take photos of them, make sure you move them to your computer, and then you would upload them. Then we have the study guide. The study guide is exactly what it looks like, exactly what it says. This is a list of topics from each unit. These are organized by unit. These are different things that you need to know for the final. These are questions and different lists of things that you should know. And these questions come directly from the final. If you can answer any of these questions, you're good for some of the questions on the final. These are basically just what the focuses are on. Here, this says, for example, tone and informational text. There is a section in one of the lessons that is specifically about this. So if you have notes on this, or you know what it is, you'll be able to answer the questions on the final. You have a better chance of passing. So we have these for all of the English courses, not just English 10A. So this is a good study guide to make sure that the stuff that you need is in your notes. And then we have the final itself. The final itself, like we said before when we were going over the structure of the course, are a few questions from each single lesson put together into a big, big test. Let's see. What else do I need to go over? I think that is just about it. Yeah, I think this is actually just about it. These are not big classes, but there's just a lot of moving parts. We put a lot of things in here to try to help students and give you guys the best boost that you can have to work on these and get good grades, pass the courses. If you're having any issues with any of the things that are listed here, I know that this was a lot of information. I'll stop sharing. I know that this is a lot of information. If you're having issues with understanding or remembering any of this stuff, please reach out to your advocate. Please reach out to one of the tutors. You can schedule tutoring just to have someone go over this information with you if you think it is going to be helpful. So I'm Miss Amber Stokely. I'm one of the English tutors. The tutoring document also has information from Ralda Eden and also Kathy Vahovic. These are the other two English tutors. And like I said, you can also reach out to your advocates, your mentors, pretty much anyone that you have contact with by phone, and they can point you in the right direction. We're all working together to try to get you guys where you want to go so far as passing these classes and getting through these courses so you can get your diploma. Alrighty, that is it for me. Thank you for sitting through this kind of long presentation about how the classes go, and I hope that I've answered questions and made things clear for you so that you know how you're going to start off the class and you're not lost in the very beginning. So I will hopefully, if you're looking at any of the resource videos, or if you're tutoring with me, I'll see you guys later. Otherwise, good luck with your English class. Signing off. Have a good day.